There's something many people notice, but almost nobody talks about honestly. Sometimes you see a woman in a relationship that clearly doesn't make her happy. She rarely smiles around him. Her energy feels tired. Her eyes look distant. And people around her whisper things like, "Why doesn't she just leave? She deserves better. She must be with him for the money." And maybe, sometimes that's true. But what most people don't understand is this. Staying in a relationship because of money is almost never about greed. Most of the time, it's about something much deeper, something quieter, something much harder to explain. Because from the outside, it looks simple. Just leave. But from the inside, the situation often feels like a maze with no clear exit. And sometimes, money becomes the one thing holding everything together. Not because she wants it to be, but because without it, everything else might fall apart.
Imagine waking up every day with a quiet weight sitting on your chest. Not a dramatic pain, just a constant pressure. A thought that never fully leaves your mind. You look at your life and it feels complicated. Maybe you once loved him deeply. Maybe the relationship didn't always feel this heavy. Maybe there were good moments before things changed. But now, things feel different. You notice the distance, the lack of emotional connection, the silence during dinner, the feeling that you're more like partners in survival than partners in love. And somewhere in your mind, a quiet question appears again and again. Is this still the life I want? But that question quickly brings another one, a much scarier one. What would happen if I leave? Because leaving doesn't just mean ending a relationship. Sometimes it means risking your stability, your home, your security, your future. And suddenly the emotional question turns into a survival question. And survival questions are never simple.
When people say she's only staying for the money, they imagine something shallow, luxury, comfort, an easy life. But the reality is often very different. For many women, money doesn't represent luxury. It represents safety, rent, food, healthcare, a place to sleep without fear. And sometimes, children who depend on that stability. Leaving a relationship can mean stepping into uncertainty. Where will I live? Can I afford everything alone? What happens if something goes wrong? Will my kids suffer because of my decision? These questions are not dramatic fantasies. They are very real calculations. Every month, every bill, every responsibility. And when someone is standing at the edge of financial uncertainty, love is not the only thing they think about. They think about survival. And survival changes how people make decisions.
Sometimes the story begins with dependence. Maybe she paused her career for the relationship. Maybe she stayed home to raise children. Maybe she moved cities for him. At first, it felt like teamwork, a shared future. But over time, financial independence slowly disappeared. And when independence disappears, leaving becomes much harder. Other times, the fear comes from experience. Maybe she once struggled financially before. Maybe she grew up watching her family fight over money. Maybe she remembers what it feels like to not know how the next month will work. That kind of memory never fully leaves. So when stability finally arrives, even if the relationship isn't perfect, letting go of that stability can feel terrifying.
And then there are women who simply calculate reality. They know the relationship isn't ideal, but they also know starting over alone can take years. Years of rebuilding, years of financial stress, years of uncertainty. And sometimes they quietly ask themselves, can I handle that right now? Sometimes the honest answer is no.
Many women in this situation don't feel proud of it. They don't wake up thinking, I chose this life. Instead, they carry a quiet conflict inside them. A part of them wants freedom. Another part of them wants safety. One voice says, you deserve happiness. Another voice says, you need stability. And every day, those two voices continue their conversation. Sometimes she imagines a different life, living independently, making decisions freely, feeling emotionally connected to someone. But then reality enters the picture. Bills, responsibilities, family expectations, the fear of failing alone. And slowly, the dream becomes quieter. Not because she stopped wanting it, but because survival feels louder. This kind of inner conflict is invisible to outsiders. People only see the relationship. They don't see the daily emotional negotiation happening inside her mind.
So maybe the real question isn't why does she stay for money? Maybe the deeper question is, why does society make financial security so hard to achieve alone? Because when someone has true independence, their choices look very different. When someone knows they can support themselves, they walk away from unhealthy situations much faster. Freedom changes everything. But not everyone has that freedom. And when survival becomes part of the equation, decisions stop being purely emotional. They become strategic, careful, sometimes painful. So instead of assuming greed, it might be more honest to recognize something else. Sometimes staying is not about wanting money. Sometimes it's about fearing what life looks like without it. And fear is a powerful force, stronger than many people realize.
If you've ever wondered why someone stays in a relationship that doesn't look happy, the truth might be more complicated than it appears from the outside. Human decisions are rarely simple, especially when love, survival, responsibility, and fear are all tangled together. Some women stay because of money, but not always for the reasons people assume. Sometimes it's about protection. Sometimes it's about timing. Sometimes it's about waiting until the moment when leaving becomes possible. And sometimes it's about choosing the kind of struggle that feels slightly more manageable. Because every life contains struggles. The question many people quietly ask themselves is, which struggle can I survive right now? And until that answer changes, some women stay. Not because they don't want more, but because the world they are navigating makes the path to more much more complicated than it seems.